when stars are in light, the weeper, we would know.
Hey everyone, welcome back to She Burps Podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Michelle, and today's guest is Nancy. Hi, Nancy.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Having me here, Brooke. Thank you.
So can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, about myself. Okay. Well, I'm a person who doesn't really like gossip. I don't mind talking about things, but there's got to be a reason for it. So if there's something that we can learn from what we're talking about so we can improve ourselves, that's different than gossip. I've traveled 6 out of the 7 continents. I grew up in Manhattan for the first 13 years, which is very telling of the person that I am because it molded me in so many ways. I moved to South Florida, meaning Miami Beach, and kind of moved around in South Florida for 45 years before I moved to Colorado. I've studied Buddhism in Atlanta for 4 years and Kabbalah in South Florida. I've studied art around the world, mostly Europe, and fashion. I love to follow fashion. I like to dress nicely. I think it's, makes your day just to put on something nice, whether it's fashionable or not. It's my fashion. So
I love it. I love it.
Thank you.
So before we came on, you mentioned your mother and how she treated you when you were younger. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yes, I do. It's interesting because most people, when something bad happens to them, they kind of get stuck. So we have an opportunity to either become stuck and bitter and mean people, or we have the opportunity to become optimistic and learn from our experience. And instead of, for example, when she was a really bad mother, she was very neglectful, she was highly abusive, she would have been rotting in jail if things were different back then as far as being able to figure out those things were happening. I always took her as an example of how I would not be that sort of mother. So there's opportunities in life to, if you see it as a negative thing, no matter how bad it is, I think it's just better to turn it around and make it into something positive. Be a better person, not bitter person.
I love that. I love that. So do you still speak to your mom?
My mother, thankfully, I know a lot of people, they might gasp if I say this, but unless you've been with an abuser or lived with an abuser, you don't really understand. But thankfully, she's dead now for 6 years. And I will say that I'm very happy that I've been born like 6 years ago and evolving, because I'm free at last from somebody that only wished me harm and was really, really cruel. So it's nice to be free.
Yes, that's amazing. I love that. And I hope my listeners that have been through the same situation you've been through and been abused, I hope they see that too, that they're free. They can be free. Even if their mom or their abuser is still alive, they can still be free because you can cut them off and never ever talk to them again.
Yes, you can. And if they have a hold on you the way my mother had a hold on me, I was unable to break through free because we had nobody else in the family. So everybody else was killed in the Second World War during the Holocaust and so on. And so I think a lot of her baggage and what had made her was that she was an illegitimate child. That's a hard word for me to say, illegitimate child, in a day back in 1932. And So she had to live in the ghetto. But I have met so many other lovely older women that had gone through the same thing, and they were not damaged like she was. So that's when I've noticed, this is a choice I have. This is a definite choice, and I'm glad I'm on the right road. But every day I had to come up with something to kind of reestablish myself, because I would talk to her for 3 hours every day.
Oh, wow.
This person that was just impossible. And why I did that, I just felt like a responsibility, almost like I was the mother and she was the child.
Mhm.
And so that's why I say it feels so nice to be free. Every day I wake up and I go, oh, thank the good Lord, I am done. And it feels
You're thriving. Yes, I love hearing it. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about your book.
okay.
And it's Whispers, Sinners, and Saint. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I'm going to bring it up here.
Yes, I'd love to. Whisper, sinners, and saints. So, sinner is my mother. Saints was my grandmother and another lady that took care of me before her. So, the good people in the world, which were very few and far between, only do really two. Were the saints. There seemed to have been a lot of sinners that I had come across growing up, but the biggest sinner was my mother. Whispers is actually an entity, whether it's an angel or I don't know what, but it's a higher being that came to me in a whisper to my right ear. Always comes to me in my right ear. I never know, when it the antennas are up or something, but it will give me a warning, or it will give me resilience or words of wisdom. It will tell me things that I humanly would not know.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time whispers came to me, I was 5 months old, because it was the first time I recall being outside of my body. That was the first time that I recognized that I had whispers with me, but whispers was always with me even from before I was born, which I write about and talk about as well, which is highly unusual.
What was the hardest scene to write in your book?
The hardest thing for me to write about is I write very graphic and detailed recounts of not only my mother beating me, but also the sights that she's seen in Eastern Europe when the Nazis were persecuting the people. And I bring the two scenarios together in one. So a lot of times people will really say, wow, it's an intense book.
Mm-hmm.
The intensity is, you're reading it, a reader reads it. That was my life. So on a daily basis. And writing is nothing compared to actually living it every day. My mother would beat me unconscious every day. So,
was there any reason why? Like, I mean, there's never a reason why to beat someone like unconscious, but did she ever say anything like,
yes, she
why?
did. Yeah, unfortunately, she said plenty. I was to pay for all the wrongdoings that happened to her.
What?
And so everything, like she was an immigrant in this country and had a hard time at first learning the language. Then, of course, getting a job. She was a single mother. I don't know if I don't think I ever knew my father. But anything that went bad for her that day, like she got fired because she gave out the wrong food to everybody. She was a waitress, and the chef would come after her with a knife, or she thought she was feeding cats and she found out they were rats, and whatever it was, I was the punching bag that she then it became a habit, a way for her to release all the hatred and hurt that she had. And that was, she would recant the stories, and literally the stories were beaten into me.
What?
Yeah, literally the stories that I tell you about, they were literally beaten into me. Yeah.
And she never got in trouble for beating you or anything? Like no CPS ever was called or
Isn't
anything?
that something? Like, back then, I'm 65 years old. So we're talking back, I was born in 1959.
Okay.
And one scene I write about, I'm writing the second book now. I came from an area where the Aryan race was,
Oh.
first the national headquarters. So everything was Reichstag, like boom, boom, boom. And everywhere you went, it was like you sat literally, the teachers would go around and smack your knee if your legs were not in a 90-degree angle. Is that crazy? They had rulers and they had oars and they'd smack you with it. I never got hit with it. I was really glad that that would be around, though, because it would kind of keep kids that were really out of whack in order. But it was just such a different lifestyle, a different way of life. Children were not meant to be heard from. You just sat there, with your hands clasped, and
Wow.
you never. And as a kid, I had no brothers, no sisters. I had no aunts. I had no uncles. I had,
Dang.
yeah, I had a grandmother that finally came out when I was 5. So my life was a little better from 5 to 10. But from 5 to 10, and um, but boy, if my mother got me alone, I was torn limb to limb. I mean, limb to limb. Yeah,
Man,
yeah.
I don't understand why she just didn't like give you to a family that wanted you instead of abusing you.
And you say that, and it was such a cruel game that she would play with me starting when my grandmother passed away in the second book. I was 11, and she would say to me, they really liked you. Would you like to go live with them? And there was no way that I would actually say yes, because it was a trick. Everything was always a test. And if I would say, oh my God, I would love to go live with anybody, I would get, smacked worse. So I couldn't like speak up. Policemen would find me on the street, and they would say to me, they would recognize me. And my mother would say, oh my God, she ran away. She ran away. I didn't run away. She left me in a storefront hidden. And I sat there for like 3 hours, and I was just supposed to wait for her to come back. But I couldn't, because I was figuring, oh my God, now, something went in my head. And first of all, I had to use the bathroom after 3 hours. And I walked around. I didn't see her. And I said, I better run home. She probably forgot about me. So the police, they said, hey, little girlie, what are you doing crossing the street by yourself? A big intersection. We're talking Manhattan,
Oh, wow.
New York City. And so he says to me, what are you doing? I said, I'm going home. He says, where's your mommy? I go, yeah, that's a good, I was afraid, what to say. So anyway, my mother finally comes about a half an hour, and he says, oh, I recognize you. And I was like, oh, he recognizes her. That means this happened before. Now I hadn't remembered that, but I knew to pay attention to that. And
Yeah.
she goes, Oh, Ofi said, she had a Hungarian accent. Ofi said, oh, she's so bad. She ran away. I hold her hand and she ran away. Now shame on you. And then he'd reprimand me. And I'd be like thinking in my head, hey, buddy, this is the one that needs reprimanding.
Right.
She's the bad guy. I'm not me. And then as soon as she'd turn around, she'd be like, now you're really going to get it. And she'd push me and shove me and then beat me until I was unconscious when we got home. So
What?
it was every day. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Man. So your mother is Hungarian?
Yes. Hungarian. Yes. Yes.
No.
So
What was?
Was Hungarian. She's probably still Hungarian. Yeah. I had to learn that language. I learned the language. I still speak the language, although I am probably rusty now after 6 years of not speaking with anyone.
Oh, man. Man, so you mentioned a second book. What's the second book going to be called, and what's that about?
Yes. Well, this book, Whisper Sinners and Saints, goes up to age 11. I had that much to write. And actually, it takes a few steps back. The second book does to age 8 and 9, because there was school years that I needed to talk about, and life, what it was like in New York City at that time, and my perspective at that age of what New York was. And then telling about what my mother was going through. And it'll go until I'm age 17 when I move out of New York City. I moved to South Florida, and my mother kind of sort of is not around anymore. When I'm age 13, I'm kind of on my own. I live with my godmother, Country Katie, who's really a character and a half. But basically, I'm on my own, which I prefer over being under that kind of thumb of my mother.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read this book. I'm definitely this one's definitely on my to be read list. Definitely.
Oh, you know what I'm surprised about is people that have really, gone through something and really have a difficult time, or have had a difficult time. They actually love this book. People that kind of had a lily white kind of life, they almost don't believe it. And they don't actually get it because their life was so good.
Yeah.
But my life was nothing good.
Yeah, they feel like you're lying. Like if you've been through a survivor type story, they're like, "Oh, you're lying." I'm like, "No, these things really do happen."
Oh,
and they're
yeah.
like, "No."
That's right. That's right. These things really, really do happen. And a line that I like to say is that one who laughs loudest masters pain the best.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That does.
Yeah.
Speaks
You ever meet people, nothing happened to them? I mean, seriously, nothing happened to them. The cleaning lady didn't come or something like silly, and they broke a nail, and you would think, I don't know what has happened, and they just complain about everything. And then you have people, well, I'll say like me, I will laugh and I will fill the room with laughter. And I say, that's, don't tell me not to laugh loud.
Because that's funny. So did you want to read a little part of your book for us?
Well, I will say that I have a question that is asked to me a lot of times, which is, how did I know it was the first time that I met Whispers? And I'd like to read a little bit about what I wrote about that.
Okay. All right.
Is that okay? Okay. So the first time I met Whispers, he had no name to me yet. And it is before I was born. What I remember is all the other souls, what have you, were all gone. I was alone in a place where I couldn't see anything. I could hear them, and the last of them was leaving. I remember hearing our dialogue. One asked me to take on some of its burden, and I agreed to because I did not know the consequence of agreeing to do so. Another soul said we would meet up in the future, and I had to remember to look for that soul. I remember they were twinkling lights, and then there was nothing. My mind exerted painfully in the quiet of nothingness, and then there came a voice I knew was supreme. Its presence was luminous and possessing grand all knowing. I pleaded telepathically, when's it my turn to leave? To which the answer was consistently, it's not time yet. Long periods of time passed before his presence again without change to our short dialogue. And then finally, his reply changed to, it will be very hard for you if you return before the time you are meant to. When he returned again, I said, this is terrible. I see nothing. I hear nothing. Whatever it is, I can't imagine it worse than this. With a couple of more of the same telepathic communication, I was finally told, only if you are sure, because you will have a very hard life if you go now. You can stay here, serve out your time, and then have a much better time of it. Those were my first encounters with all-knowing Whispers, and that was not on the earthly plane. The next time I recognized we were still in connection was when I was in human baby form, 5 months old. We had been in contact. I just didn't realize it until my first out-of-body experience at 5 months old. I was not shocked. He was by my side because he was familiar to me. He had whispered, I am here, but I had discarded him. I suppose, like many adults in this world who still do not realize the power of his presence. With time, I grew to trust him more and more. He is the only one I do trust. I will listen to whispers over anything I have heard a tangible person say. He hasn't been wrong, but I have learned that when I could not do something he warned me about due to the orders of my mother, I would pay a heavy price.
Wow.
So that's just a little bit.
And you said Whispers is an entity? Or
Yeah, it's like a saint or a guardian that comes and whispers in my ear. So that's why I call it Whispers. When I first asked him what his name was, what do they call you? He said global. And I understood global. So for a very long time, because when I first saw him, he was like this luminous thing. He illuminated the whole room.
Mhm.
And even like illuminated through me. I guess he wanted to make sure that he knew that I knew that this was like something you're not going to forget. And
Right.
so I figured, hey, he's global and, global. And then later on, I realized his name is Global. He's for everybody. That's why, because he's global. And I couldn't talk about it when I was a kid. People would think you were crazy. I'd always wait, hey, does anybody have a glow ball? Does anybody have a, what do you mean a glow ball? And then there was like a toy that's called a glow ball. And I was like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I don't know. And then later on, I'd call him when I was writing the book. I called him all knowing because he seemed all knowing.
Mm-hmm.
When I was looking for names to call my book, everything I came up with was taken. So
Mm-hmm.
finally I said, well, what are we going to call you? And then I said, how do you come to me? Come to me in whispers. There you go. Whispers. And I already had sinners and saints. So that was it. I was like, all right, that's it.
I
Stamp it.
love it. I love it. I love it. And you said the sinners was your mom, and you said there was a few other sinners.
Yeah, I mean,
I know there's a lot more.
yeah, there really are. Like we have well, the people that got along with my mother, I would say, pretty much all sinners. So
Really?
sinners, yes. Unfortunately, there was one woman who we call Lily and Les. Lily and Les. Wow, they Lily was a very strong alcoholic and would wound up in mental institutions in and out of Bellevue Hospital in New York City, and she would beat her son as well. And they would leave me to watch her son, who was called Suni Mooney, because she loved him from the sun to the moon. And I guess she had a little bit of beer and scotch and everything when she said Suni Mooney. That's what she nicknamed him. His name was Alan. And she used to feed him booze from the milk bottle. From the milk bottle.
What?
Yes, from when he was a baby. And he was already an alcoholic when I was watching him at, like, he was about age 2 or 3 when I was age 4. And I was left to watch him all day long, all day, like 8 hours a day, with
What
no
happened to
supervision. What?
what happened to him now, like as an adult?
I write about him in my second book, so I gotta wait. I gotta keep the
Mm.
suspense, start the thread.
Oh
The
my
suspense.
goodness.
Yes. And yeah, so her husband would beat him and she would beat him. And I will share this, that in the story I remember holding Suni because we were both crying. Our lives were so miserable.
Mhm.
And I had asked Whispers, I just was asking, like just asking, like, why is this? We have to go through this. Why is it that we have to suffer? I mean, we were both starving. Wasn't like we were left food. Mentally starved because the TV was on, but that's not what you want. You want like an older person, somebody to care about you. I'm 4 years old taking care of a 2-year-old, so I'm holding him. And I asked him, why do we have to suffer so much? And Whisper says, well, without Suni, you would not realize how bad you have it.
Yeah.
And by seeing how bad he has it, you see how bad you have it. And isn't it better to go through it with somebody else than to go through it alone?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that, Then later on, I would also get that. It was really hard, but I got the message that I said, I remember the message was that his life was worse than mine. And I said, wow, worse than mine. I said, why? He said, well, what's going to happen is he's only going to get beat his whole life. He never will know one day of happiness, and he will die young. And I won't tell you what happens to Suni because that's in the second book. But
oh no.
yeah.
No. I'm gonna cry.
Yeah. It's and I actually saw, so talk about evil and sin. I used to call everybody a monster because that's what you know about when you're a child. as monsters. I mean, I watched cartoons, you saw monsters. But and I went to Roman Catholic school, so I knew about saints, and uh, I loved being in church.
Mhm.
I still do. I still love being in church. And all the saints, I always have saints. Like, if you could see here, I'm going to turn. Is it the wrong way, or am I going the wrong way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going the wrong way. I got saints and stuff all over the place because it reminds me that there is good. A miracle happened to them, and I consider myself. I think that me being alive to tell my story
Mhm.
and having a connection with whispers is on a small scale for me, my miracle.
Mhm.
And I always knew that I was going to write this book from age 4. So at age 4, my mother threw me out of the car and it beat me really bad. And there were people at the hot dog stand and they were watching and nobody cared to say, "Hey, lady, stop."
Nobody helped. I can't believe.
Nobody came to, no, they stood there. It was like I was invisible and she was like shooing off some dust and it was nonstop. She had gone in and out of the car. And so the minute I'd start to get up and to brush myself off, she would come back and just beat me more. So at one point I just said, forget it. I'm just laying down. I'm going to make it like I'm dead because she just keeps coming back. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Man.
But at that point I had said to Whispers Global, why is this happening to me? I mean, what is going on? I didn't do anything. I was just so happy. And he said, everything will be all right when you write. Well, I didn't understand that because I didn't understand that. I didn't know how to spell. I'm 4 years old and I just repeated it and I repeated it. Everything's going to be all right when I write. Everything's going to be all right when I write. And finally it hit me. Everything's going to be all right when I write.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm going to tell everybody. That's and then I felt like I had a purpose. And I
Yes.
felt like, okay, so this is why these things have to happen to me. So I get it. And every time she beat me, I'd be like, yeah, I'm telling everybody, and then the boom, lights out, right? Blackout.
Man. I'm
Yeah.
so happy that you are a survivor and you're telling your story. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
where can
Yeah.
my listeners find your book?
Pardon me?
Where can my listeners find your book?
Oh, I'm on Amazon. That's the best place to find the book. You can either go to nancyhart.com, which is my website, and it has a buy now button, or you can go to Amazon and then look up Whispers, Sinners, and Saints, or you can just look up Nancy Hart and you'll find my book right there. And I'd love it. I love hearing that it really changes people's perspectives and their way that they see life, and everything that they saw as negative, they're able to turn it to a positive. I really like hearing from my fans as well.
Yes, this is amazing. So I'm definitely going to add this book to my to be read list.
Oh,
And
yeah.
definitely. So I want to thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing your story and speaking about your books.
Thank you for having me. I had a wonderful time. You're a wonderful host, and I wish you all the best luck in your life.
Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. Hey everyone, thank you all so much for listening to She Blurbs podcast. If you would like to purchase Nancy's book, like she said, you can go on nancyhart.com and click on buy here, or you can go to Amazon and look up Whispers, Sinners, and Saints. Thank you all so much for listening to She Blurbs podcast, and see you all next time for the next interview. Bye.